everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Recently, I stumbled upon a video from Richard Eden with Daily Mail Royals talking about Meghan Markle and Catherine, Princess of Wales, falling out and the pictures of them together throughout the brief relationship that they had, highlighting the different times that they were thrust together when things looked like they were going okay and when things maybe looked like they weren't. One thing that really stood out to me was the efforts that Catherine clearly was making to try to connect and make things work. Ultimately, the time frame in which Meghan had joined the royals or got engaged and then married to Harry was a time in which Catherine was preoccupied, to say the least. She had 2 young children at home and a third on the way when Meghan first was spotted out with the royals for Christmas, which was before the wedding. This was one of the earliest times that the world was really introduced to Meghan Markle in the context of being part of the royal family. You know, she and Harry had done their engagement announcement and interview and had been seen around together, but this was kind of the first big moment of them all together, was this first Christmas. And Catherine's pregnant in this. It's one of my favorite maternity looks from her, but it's also just one of my favorite Christmas looks from her because the tartan is so Christmassy and fabulous. I just thought her look was really cute and fun, and it was perfect for her growing baby bump because her shorter hair and her big hat drew the eye up, and the shorter hemline kept her looking cute and fun and energetic. So I really like that outfit. But Meghan then, in contrast, sort of a sign of things to come, was in her brown, boring coat. This camel coat, the brown hat, the brown accessories that didn't really go together that well was just kind of a drab option for the holidays. And I think a lot of people did chalk it up to, well, she's new. This is, gonna have a learning curve. She was still in the good graces of the public, getting benefit of the doubt for things. But it's clear just how much the dynamic changed from this Christmas to the next Christmas. You can see things clearly started to get tense after that first Christmas. But next, Richard talks about this one and only outing of the Fab Four on this Heads Together panel discussion, where, as he points out, things look really awkward. Meghan clearly went off script and was throwing a bit of a wrench in the machine, demanding that she be allowed to say what she wanted to say. As Richard points out, in Spare, Harry alleges that Meghan requested to borrow Catherine's lip gloss and that Catherine wasn't super stoked about it. I don't really fully believe this story at all. I think this may have been a situation where Meghan told Harry a story and then Harry was just repeating it, and it's not necessarily true. Because it's gross to ask to borrow somebody's lip gloss, of all things, on top of it. It's not like maybe a little blush or something where it's going to be away from like your mouth and your eyes. But even any makeup of any kind isn't really a great thing to share between people, especially people who you don't know very well. There was some degree of tension clearly during this time. But another thing that seems to really stand out is Catherine comes across just more calm and quiet, and Meghan does come across more amateur, eager to come out, big statements, big things to say, wanting to do a lot. And that, of course, is going to cause tension. I think everybody picked up on the bit of tension that was involved, and the interviewer or the host for this panel conversation even asked if there was tensions going on because things just felt tense amongst the group. We've long discussed Meghan's mistakes in trying to do too much and take too many liberties too soon. If she had waited and learned the ropes a little bit longer, she would have been more well respected by everybody. The people that she was working with, the rest of the royal family members who are working alongside her or adjacent, as well as the public in general. People have all experienced new jobs, new situations, new schools, things like that, and had to learn the dynamics of a group and a situation and a job before coming in with their own way of doing things. And it doesn't mean that Meghan's approach or the way she wanted to do things would have been wrong or bad or not good. She may very well have had good ideas or good solutions or good approaches to things. The problem is that she tried to change things before she even understood what she was doing and where she was and what she was involved in. She didn't give herself any opportunity to take in the context that she found herself in before trying to do things differently and change things, essentially. And so this moment here is kind of a representation. It kind of encapsulates that exact problem and vibe. Next, Richard talks about the wedding, and as we now know and have heard nonstop from Harry and Meghan, there were a lot of tensions going up leading into the wedding. And one of you recently sent me a message that included a wonderful observation. Colleen says, "Why was there a fitting for flower dresses just 4 days before the wedding?" Very good point. 4 days is cutting it really, really close, especially for little girls. And 4 days ahead is cutting it really close. Everybody has lots to do in the lead up to that weekend, not just the bride and groom. And so it is unfortunate that Meghan didn't have things more well organized to where there didn't need to be a fitting just a few days before and adjustments made that closely to the wedding. It just adds a great deal of stress whenever possible. Unless you're dealing with a pregnancy or immediate postpartum, you shouldn't need to have a fitting just 3, 4, 5 days ahead of time. There should be no problem it being maybe 2 weeks or at minimum 10 days close. I feel like that's kind of the cutoff for what should be reasonable, because once you hit 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 day before an event, you're going to be busy getting all your other ducks in a row. For something like this, that's when you're getting your hair appointments and manicures if you're doing that, making sure things are pressed and clean at that point rather than still needing to be worked on. But we don't need to get into all of that mess. He points out that when they came out of the chapel, it was clear that there was some degree of tension because Catherine, William, and their children are definitely keeping to themselves off to the side. And a lot of you noticed that as well, that when they left the church, most of the family was speaking amongst themselves, kind of like moving on to the next thing, not really sitting and taking time to take in Harry and Meghan, who were down the steps in front of them as they, were introduced to the public waiting outside as now officially married. You would think the family would be watching the happy couple, sharing a kiss and waving hello to the crowds and sort of celebrating in that moment. And you can see that is sort of contrasted here in these pictures of Catherine and William's wedding, where everybody does look a little bit more focused on the couple and excited about it. Whereas this group coming out of the church looks a little bit bewildered, a little bit stressed, a little bit tired, and kind of ready to go sort of vibes. Next, he talks about that first trooping the color following the wedding. And Meghan did sort of find herself in some scrutiny, some criticism, or feedback for her outfit choice. The off-the-shoulder top was just not seen as a professional or appropriate choice for representing the monarchy in general. Harry and Meghan chose to take the job as senior working royal members of the royal family rather than continue on acting and just Harry work with the family or just, do something a little bit different. They chose to do the working royal gig. And so Meghan coming out with this off-the-shoulder top was not necessarily the best move. As he points out, it was probably the first time that Meghan and Harry both really saw that their position in the family was going to remain behind the Prince and Princess of Wales. Then the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Next, they went to Wimbledon together, and this is a moment where we saw Meghan wear puddle pants, literally puddling up on the floor, looking absolutely ridiculous, and a ridiculous choice of shirt. If you've ever been to Wimbledon, you will recognize those tops, those sort of blue striped tops. It was an odd choice for sure, and it looks quite messy. As you can see, the thin trousers over the top of this bulky shirt tucked in. It just looks frumpy, it looks weird, it looks bad, and messy all around. The rumor is that she suggested she and Catherine hold hands walking into this venue. That is a really weird suggestion in the context of Meghan and Catherine were still within 1 year of meeting one another and getting to know one another still, not having spent very many hours around one another cumulatively. They're still relatively new to each other. Kind of not strangers necessarily, but like still in acquaintance territory. If it weren't for the wedding connecting them, the marriages of each of them connecting them in some way, if they had just been like two ladies who met each other at work, at this stage, they would still be in acquaintance territory, co-worker territory. They don't even have enough time around each other at this particular point to be friends, really. But they're clearly trying, or at least Catherine is clearly trying. Taking Meghan along to Wimbledon was a really nice gesture. Meghan has claimed to like watching tennis, whether that's just because she has curated at least the image of a friendship with Serena Williams, or whether she actually does like tennis, who knows. It's clear though her etiquette when it comes to attending tennis matches is poor. We've seen her talking during tense moments of a match, during tense times, trying to talk to Serena's family members and them completely ignoring her because they're actually paying attention to the game and the tension of the match and what's happening. We've seen her kick people out of the box so that she could have it to herself for some strange reason. Very, very poor etiquette. We've seen her wear weird clothes, weird options of clothes, things like jeans or hats that are generally against the rules or the code of conduct. And we, of course, seen faces like these while she's accompanying Catherine, following her in. Suggesting to hold hands seemed really, really strange, and it wouldn't have made sense. It would have looked ridiculous. Could you imagine? Richard reads out this quote from Tom Bower's book, Revenge. On her own, Meghan's radiance won universal applause, but beside the taller, authoritative future queen, the Duchess appeared diminished. Neither could conceal their mutual discomfort. I'm not sure that I would fully agree that it was just down to that. Meghan made really poor choices with her outfit. Had she gone for monochrome looks that allowed her to look more elongated and more polished, and gone for more tailored looks, Meghan seems to conflate things like trousers and button-downs with a tailored look. They are not the same. Just because it's a button-down shirt does not mean it's tailored at all. Tailoring is something being custom fitted to you, where the sleeves are not going to have too much volume, the shoulders are going to hit you at the right place, and it can taper in to match your waistline or create better illusion of a waistline. Meghan doesn't do those things with her clothes, and if she had worn more appropriate outfits and more flattering outfits, she wouldn't have looked so out of place next to Catherine. Now, Catherine is quite tall. She's very slim and slender. She has great proportions, and she carries clothing really, really well. That being said, there's no reason why Meghan couldn't have looked just as polished and fantastic next to Catherine. It was all in the choices that she made. She chose things that left her looking more frumpy, that accentuated her proportions in a bad way, drawing attention to the boxy short torso and the long lanky limbs, for example, or drawing attention to the wider shoulder line, just simply doesn't flatter Meghan. She needs things that are going to elongate her for sure, at least. And so I think a lot of it came down to choice of styling. Next, we have this moment at Princess Eugenie's wedding where Meghan was very clearly wearing an outfit that was leaning on maternity wear, trying to stir up rumors, and then announced her pregnancy at the wedding. Poor etiquette in general, but in the pictures you can see that Catherine looks happy and excited and is chatting, and she's wearing a bright and vibrant color. She looks very much more in the moment of the wedding. Meanwhile, Meghan looks preoccupied. She looks like she's thinking about where she's going to be, where she's going to be standing. She looks like she's not really paying attention to the wedding in general. And that's something that's indicative of those more self-centered types of personalities, where they're more kind of viewing a situation through the lens of how people are going to see it or how it's going to look, and they're mentally preoccupied by it, and it just comes through in their eyes. You can just tell, versus somebody who's just in the moment and enjoying themselves. you can tell. As the dynamic sort of changed and Meghan was pregnant with Archie during these sorts of pictures, Richard points out that it looks like there is some degree of discomfort in this greeting tensions, especially around some big events or big life changes, like having a baby, getting married. Those sorts of things are going to create tensions for the people, the stress of it for the people themselves, as well as for them in how they show up in relationships and jobs and things like that. Also, Meghan was starting a new job, moving a country. You know, she had a lot of stressors adding to this situation. And so when there's been tensions, a good thing to do to just let bygones be bygones and move forward is to just be cordial and try to move forward and see how things unfold, because people take time to settle into roles, to get used to things and to kind of calm down. And with that, as they adjust, then you can kind of get a better read of their baseline when it comes to a relationship and how they show up emotionally or socially. And so it looks like Catherine, at least, is trying to kind of give another chance here, a fresh start sort of a vibe. Like, let's just let this relationship have the time that it needs to develop at all. On the other hand, it's clear from Harry and Meghan's side and the things that they have said, they just really wanted things to be how they wanted them immediately, all of the time. They wanted, Meghan and Harry really wanted and felt that it was very important that they have 100% positive press coverage all of the time, that they had the same exact opportunities and status as Prince William and Princess Catherine. These things just are not, that's not how it works. That's not how it's gonna be. But also they didn't really give themselves time or the chance to get to that point because they were trying to rush it and just have everything this way right away. Meghan wanting to jump into all of these work duties immediately without really fully understanding the role even or what was expected of her yet. Things like that. So it would be reasonable to assume that Harry and Meghan also wanted basically to be besties immediately, or at least that Meghan expected to be instant besties with Catherine and with William. And we can see that show up in her behavior in other ways, like how she hugs people all the time, or she's very clingy and touchy and physically in their bubble a lot of the time, or acting overly close with people who she has just met. It's something that's just not normal in the grand scheme of things. And it indicates somebody who is trying to create that sort of false rapport, that sense of closeness before it's really there. It's artificial. And so it can actually backfire and make the other people put up their guards. It's not always coming from a nefarious place or a manipulative place like a lot of people think it is with Meghan. It can be coming from a place of being shy, not really knowing what to do, and just wanting to be like, yay, we're friends, in hopes that people will like you. So it's not always a just coming from a really negative space. Sometimes it's just coming from that awkwardness or social awkwardness. At the same time, it's clear that Harry and Meghan and William and Catherine had challenges, and it was not easy going in the beginning. And so it would have been much more appropriate to cool it on that expectation and give that relationship more space and time to develop. Next, we see them at a polo match over the summer, and the rumors around at the time, the word on the street was that Meghan was not supposed to be there that day. She just kind of showed up. A lot of people thought she saw that Catherine was there with her children and was like, well, I shouldn't miss out on this opportunity to come. In retrospect, knowing that they had been discussing leaving long before this photo was taken, it would stand to reason that Meghan perhaps felt some degree of pressure to show up this day because it was, as she knew in the back of her mind, unbeknownst to everyone else, that this was one of the last opportunities she had to show up at a polo match, a royal polo match, and get pictures at such an event. And this was one of the occasions where people have discussed the disconnect between the women and that they were not really talking or engaging with one another. To which I would say, or remind people, that each of them had children to look after. Catherine is not surrounded by a team of nannies or something like that here. She has her 3 kiddos herself, and she is trying to take care of them and watch them and pay attention to them. 3 little ones like that is a handful. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of voices going on. There's a lot of needs being asked from mom. And so she's just fully engaged with her little ones here, and Meghan is busy with her little one. So I don't see it as some sort of snub in any way, shape, or form, but rather Catherine was busy and also off duty, just trying to have a normal time. Next time we saw them at Wimbledon, in which she brought Pippa along, perhaps as a bit of a buffer to the situation. In this one, Meghan looks to be a little bit happier than she did the first time, like she's trying a little bit harder to be more pleasant and whatnot. But it is clear by this point that there is more tension. Catherine typically looks very happy and relaxed and in the moment at Wimbledon. She's laughing with William, she's paying close attention to the match, and here she does look a little bit more tense. But regardless of the tension, Catherine did bring Meghan along to Wimbledon once again in an attempt to at least calm the media down, make it look like things are fine, and if not for optics, for in real life to send the message to Meghan that she is supportive and she is kind and she is willing to establish a relationship together. As I said before, Catherine was not under any sort of obligation to do events with Meghan. They had already divided up their offices and stuff at that point. This was purely a social outreach at this point. Next, we see them at the Commonwealth Day service, one of the last times they were seen, and it's clear the tension on Harry's face much more than the tension on Meghan's. Harry looks so tense and upset and shocked almost at the clearly cold reception, but how could it not be? They hightailed and left and were making things very difficult and had been manipulating the narrative. Harry says, I felt really distant from the rest of my family, which was interesting because so much of how they operate is about what it looks like rather than what it feels like. And it felt cold as well as looked cold. Well, where's the responsibility here? Harry did all of this. Harry caused all of this. So why isn't he taking any degree of responsibility for the reception, for the reaction? Next, he discusses the dynamic at the funeral events for Queen Elizabeth II. Catherine has since said that this was one of the most challenging things she ever had to do. And if you think about it from the context of somebody who's very private and quiet about their personal life, doesn't share much about it, who was also quite close to the Queen, obviously. To have to go through the initial stages of grief and be at events around somebody who they clearly have had really negative experiences with is something really, really challenging to do. When you're mourning the loss of somebody, you're already in a really vulnerable place, and it's already a sort of uncomfortable time. And having that compounded and exacerbated by Harry and Meghan would have been extremely challenging. Having to coordinate this walkabout where Meghan made them an entire hour late from when they were supposed to go. Having to deal with and protect herself, her husband, her children from these people who have been so unkind and uncaring towards them during a time where they are already sad and feeling vulnerable would have been incredibly challenging. And she dealt with it with grace and poise as usual. While I think that these very few photos do encapsulate the roller coaster and sort of demise of the relationship between the two, there was so much more to the story behind the scenes. Leave it in the comments what you think about this collection of photos and how it personified the challenges between the two. What always stands out to me most when looking at Catherine and Meghan is how these two ladies who were of similar age entering into a similar position, not the same, obviously, Catherine, Princess of Wales, more senior, a future queen, versus Meghan, who is always going to be in that supporting role. Still, the approach they each have taken to royal life, and then, Meghan rejecting it and leaving and all of that, the approaches are so different. That's what always stands out to me the most, the contrast between the two. That Catherine seems mindful, like she's taking her time and focused on the long game, whereas Meghan seemed very focused on short-term returns and attention-grabbing sort of maneuvers and just odd choices overall that seemed ill thought out and reactionary and unprofessional. And ultimately, that was probably a huge part of the friction. Not just the two women having very different approaches to the same or similar situations, but the element of disrespect that comes along with the way Meghan approached it all. I'm excited to hear your opinions in the comments though. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye.